Good afternoon. The subcommittee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. Pursuant to Committee Rule 2E and House Rule 11, the chair announces that she may postpone roll call votes. Pursuant to notice, the Subcommittee on the Environment meets to consider the following measures: H.R. 1237, the Coast Research Act; H.R. 1716, the Coastal Communities Ocean Acidification Act of 2019; H.R. 1921, the Ocean Acidification Innovation Act of 2019; and H.R. 988, the NEAR Act of 2019. Welcome to our first Environment Subcommittee markup. Today, we will be marking up 4 bipartisan bills that address an invisible but growing threat to our ocean and coastal economies and communities: ocean acidification. At our March 7th subcommittee hearing entitled Sea Change, Impacts of Climate Change on Our Nation's Oceans and Coasts, we heard from a variety of experts from the research community and industry who recognized ocean acidification as one of the top threats facing our oceans and coasts. Before going into the bills we will be marking up, I first want to give a brief explanation of why we need to address ocean acidification. Ocean acidification is the gradual decrease in oceanic pH due to absorption of excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It is often called the other CO2 problem because, like climate change, it is caused primarily by excess CO2 in the atmosphere. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the oceans have absorbed about a third of anthropogenic CO2 emissions, resulting in a 30% increase in acidity levels. This increase in ocean acidity can cause a number of problems that we are only beginning to fully understand. In the mid-2000s, the multi-million-dollar Pacific Northwest shellfish hatchery industry experienced a near economic collapse due to shellfish larvae struggling to develop shells, which was eventually linked to more acidic ocean waters. This was a wake-up call for the shellfish industry, researchers, and coastal communities. Recognizing the growing threat of ocean acidification, Congress enacted the Federal Ocean Acidification Research and Monitoring Act, or FORAM, in 2009 to support research and monitoring efforts to better understand ocean acidification and its impacts. The bill established the Ocean Acidification Program at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and the Interagency Working Group on Ocean Acidification, which provides a coordinated response by federal agencies to understand, monitor, and address ocean acidification. Since FORAM was passed into law, our understanding of ocean acidification impacts has increased substantially. For example, we know much more about why shelled marine organisms, such as oysters, mussels, clams, and corals, are particularly sensitive to low pH conditions. It is also predicted that many other fisheries will be negatively impacted, with some models predicting that acidification will cause widespread declines in fish catch. Thanks to FORAM, the engagement of multiple sectors, including federal and non-federal researchers, shellfish industry, resource managers, and others, there has been success in adapting the shellfish hatchery industry to ocean acidification. Now we need to help prepare other potentially vulnerable communities and industries. However, there is still a long way to go in understanding, predicting, and preparing for changes in ocean chemistry, which is why we need to enhance existing federal efforts and add more tools to the toolbox, as the bills we're marking up today will accomplish. H.R. 1237, the Coastal and Ocean Acidification Stressors and Threats, COAST Research Act of 2019, reauthorizes and updates the FORAM Act of 2009 to broaden the scope of federal efforts to better understand the effects of ocean and coastal acidification. H.R. 1716, the Coastal Communities Ocean Acidification Act of 2019, supports federal research and monitoring efforts by identifying the socioeconomic needs of coastal communities vulnerable to ocean acidification through requiring NOAA to conduct vulnerability assessments. H.R. 1921, the Ocean Acidification Innovation Act of 2019, creates prize competitions to incentivize innovative solutions to help vulnerable communities better understand, monitor, and respond to ocean acidification. Finally, H.R. 988, the National Estuaries and Acidification Research, NEAR Act of 2019, improves our understanding of the impacts of ocean acidification on our nation's ecologically and economically important estuarine environments. Before I yield back, I would also like to place into the record this letter of support for all 4 bills from Ocean Conservancy. I do so without objection. I'm glad we're marking up this legislation today to address the growing impacts of ocean acidification and look forward to moving these bills through the markup process and eventually to the floor. I now recognize Ranking Member Marshall to present his opening remarks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chairwoman Fletcher, for holding this markup today. But before I begin my statement, I want to welcome the newest member of our subcommittee, my very good friend, Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez Colon. As Puerto Rico's only representative in Congress, she brings a unique and valued perspective to our subcommittee, especially on ocean acidification, the topic of today's legislation. I look forward to working with her as a member of this subcommittee. Now, while Kansas may be very far from our nation's coastlines, discussing the impact of our climate on the country's resources is of top importance to our farmers and producers, both in Kansas as well as across the country. As a grandfather as well as an avid outdoorsman, I believe that we need to leave this world better than we found it for the next generation. And I hope this legislation we'll be discussing today will bring us one step closer to finding innovative solutions to the challenge of ocean acidification. In 2009, Congress first passed the Federal Ocean Acidification Research and Monitoring Act, which was intended to help the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration better understand the effects of ocean acidification on the ocean environment. You can't say this too quickly. There's too big of words, and they kind of run together there. Lots of vowels. This law created the Interagency Working Group on Ocean Acidification, which is made up of 14 different agencies and institutions to coordinate research and resource management related to ocean acidification. Despite their efforts, we learned in a hearing hosted by this subcommittee in February that there's still more we can do to address the causes and impacts of the changing ocean chemistry, especially as it pertains to coastal regions. The measures today have been offered by a bipartisan group of members representing coastal districts most impacted by ocean acidification. Whether through better coordination across federal agencies or through expansion and improvements to existing programs, these bills modify the way that we approach changes to marine ecosystems. The Earth's oceans are always in a state of evolution, and the steps we're taking today can improve the sustainability and overall health of our ecosystems, while still encouraging innovative approaches to addressing these fluctuations. I thank my colleagues for their leadership in addressing this issue and encourage the members of this subcommittee to support these bills. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. So we will now consider H.R. 1237, the Coast Research Act. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 1237, a bill to amend the Federal Ocean Acidification Research and Monitoring Act of 2009 to establish an Ocean Acidification Advisory Board to expand and improve the research on ocean acidification.
So without objection, the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. I will recognize myself briefly to comment on the bill. H.R. 1237, the Coast Research Act of 2019, reauthorizes and updates the 4AM Act of 2009 to broaden the scope of federal efforts to better understand the effects of ocean and coastal acidification. The bill establishes an advisory board comprised of non-federal members that represent a balance of geographical, scientific, and industry interests, and tasks it with advising and informing the federal agencies on the Interagency Working Group on Ocean Acidification. The bill places NOAA in charge of coordinating the federal efforts on ocean acidification, including establishing data management standards. Finally, H.R. 1237 reauthorizes the program for each of the fiscal years 2019 through 2023 for NOAA and the National Science Foundation's activities under 4AM. I strongly support the bill, and I urge my colleagues to support it as well. Before I yield back, I want to note the important work of the bill's sponsor, Ms. Bonamici. She has done incredible work on this issue and is unfortunately unavoidably detained at another committee. She asks that her statement on this bill, as well as the other three, be placed in the record. We'll do so without objection. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Chairwoman Johnson?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm delighted that you're holding this markup to advance legislation that addresses ocean acidification and one of the major stressors to our oceans and coast. The Environment Subcommittee's first hearing was on climate change impacts on our oceans and coast. This hearing provided an opportunity to receive testimony from scientific experts and impacted industries about the effects of excess carbon dioxide emissions on the marine environment. Absorption of increasing carbon dioxide emissions from the atmosphere remains a leading cause of ocean acidification. The impacts of these increased acidity levels on marine and coastal ecosystems are both widespread and not well understood. We must address these knowledge gaps in order to develop adaptation and mitigation strategies for this ocean change. Given the importance of this issue and how it can impact our coastal community, regardless of political affiliation, I am glad to see that the Environment Subcommittee is marking up 4 bipartisan bills today. Ms. Bonamich's Coast Research Act would authorize and update the Federal Ocean Acidification Research and Monitoring and Forum Act. The original statute established the Ocean Acidification Program at NOAA and the Interagency Working Group on Ocean Acidification. It is important for us as members of the Science Committee to reauthorize critical programs within our committee's jurisdiction that have expired. Providing congressional direction through the reauthorization of federal programs allows for an opportunity to reevaluate these programs and determine if they need to be updated and modernized. The other 3 bills that are marking up today provide additional avenues to address ocean acidification and its impacts through vulnerability assessments, prize competitions, and a National Academy study. All of these activities would enhance the ongoing ocean acidification work currently conducted by NOAA and other federal agencies and help address some of the knowledge gaps in this field. I again want to thank you, Chair, for convening this markup on this suite of ocean acidification bills. I look forward to these bills moving through the Science Committee in a bipartisan fashion before heading to the floor. And for that, I yield back.
Thank you, Chairwoman Johnson. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Are there any amendments to the bill? If no, then a reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 1237 to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill be approved. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill. Without objection, so ordered. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure. We'll now consider H.R. 1716, the Coastal Communities Ocean Acidification Act of 2019. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 1716, a bill to direct the Secretary of Commerce, acting through the Administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, to conduct coastal community vulnerability assessments related to ocean acidification and for other purposes.
And without objection, the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point. I recognize myself briefly to comment on the bill. H.R. 1716, the Coastal Communities Ocean Acidification Act of 2019, which was introduced by Ms. Pingree, amends the 4am Act to require NOAA to study the socioeconomic impacts of ocean acidification on coastal communities across the United States. It requires NOAA to conduct assessments of the communities that are most vulnerable to ocean acidification and publish a corresponding public report that is updated at least once every 7 years. The bill creates an ongoing input mechanism to allow affected coastal industries, resource managers, and other non-federal stakeholders to provide input on federal efforts. NOAA is directed to collaborate with state and local governments that are already conducting such efforts and submit a one-time report to Congress 180 days after enactment of the bill on its efforts to support community vulnerability assessments. I support the bill and urge my colleagues to support it. Does anyone else wish to be recognized?
Madam Chair.
Yes. The chair will now recognize Ms. Gonzalez-Colon.
Thank you, Madam Chair Fletcher and Ranking Member Marshall. And as a matter of fact, I want to say thank you to my dear friend Marshall for the warm welcome to this subcommittee. This is the first time I'm in the subcommittee. I was here some weeks ago to my first hearing during the NASA budget, and I'm happy, thrilled to be here and for this markup to these important bills. And actually, H.R. 1716, the Coastal Community Ocean Acidification Act, will be instrumental in understanding the impact of this phenomenon. Overall, the bill directs NOAA to conduct coastal community vulnerability assessment related to ocean acidification. In the case of Puerto Rico and the territories, it is important. I mean, islands live under reefs, and all the economy that is related because of the fisheries and everything related to our economy is because of our waters. These assessments further require NOAA to identify coastal communities that may be impacted and are most dependent on coastal and ocean resources in collaboration with states and local officials. And many of those times, universities receive grants from the federal governments to do those kind of research, and NGOs as well. Puerto Rico is affected by anything that negatively impact the health of the ocean and our coastline. And as a matter of fact, during the last budget, the Army Corps of Engineers was allocated funds to do a coastal erosion study. Being an island community, protecting our coast as well as our coastal marine resources is of utmost importance for the stability of the economy and well-being of our island residents. And this is not just Puerto Rico. This is the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands as well. So I commend Ms. Pingree for her leadership on this issue, and I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to understand the scope and the impact on oceanic acidification. And additionally, I look forward to ensure all the territories, including Puerto Rico, are considered when conducting community studies and assessments and other important environmental initiatives undertaken by the committee. So thank you, and thank you, Ranking Member Lucas, for including us and allowing us to be part of this effort. With that, I yield back the balance of the time.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez-Colon. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Understanding that there are votes, we'll try to move fairly quickly, but we will recess if necessary and come back following votes. On this bill, are there any amendments? If no, then a reporting quorum being present, I move the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 1716 to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill be approved. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill. Without objection, so ordered. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure. We will now consider H.R. 1921, the Ocean Acidification Innovation Act of 2019. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 1921, a bill to authorize federal...
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point. I will submit my comments on the bill for the record, and proceed unless anyone else would like to be recognized. We will now proceed with the amendments in the order of the roster. The first amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by the chair, and the clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 1, offered by Ms. Fletcher, page 3, strike.
And I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. I'm going to recognize myself for 5 minutes to explain the amendment. The amendment is fairly simple. It strikes the authorization of funding from the bill. The reason for this is twofold. First, we are reauthorizing the forum activities in HR 1237, so there is no need to duplicate those efforts here. Second, the specific authorization for funds for the prize competitions is eliminated because the activities authorized in the bill are not mandatory, but rather provide new tools that the various program agencies can use to further their existing missions. For those reasons, and in consultation with Mr. Kilmer, we decided that the authorizing language was unnecessary. I urge my colleagues to support the amendment, and I yield back. Is there further discussion on the amendment? If no, the vote occurs on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The yeas have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments? If not, a reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 1921 as amended to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill be approved. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill. Without objection, so ordered. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, and/or additional views on the measure. Okay, we will now consider H.R. 988, the NEAR Act of 2019. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 988, a bill.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point. I recognize myself briefly to comment on the bill, and I will submit these comments into the record in the interest of time. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Are there any amendments? If no, then a reporting quorum being present, I move that the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 988 to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill be approved. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I ask unanimous consent that the staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill. Without objection, so ordered. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure. I want to thank the members for their attendance. This concludes our subcommittee markup.